Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right? Excellent. Thank you. We'll just wait a few more minutes until a few others join, and we'll get started with reviewing for the exam that's upcoming very soon. And we'll talk about the details of the exam today. Good afternoon. Welcome in. Just going to wait a few more minutes to see if anyone else joins us.
Good afternoon.
Okay, let's get started with an example. We want to solve the quadratic equation by factoring. That's not a very good ing. There we go. Express your answer as a fraction simplified to lowest terms if needed. And we have 4x squared plus 5x equals 6. And we're asked to solve this by factoring. So what step would you do first? What would you think you should do to start to get to factor this? Well, my first thought is that I want it to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So I want to move the 6 from the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the equation by subtracting 6 from both sides. So how do we factor? Well, we'll first use the AC method. We'll multiply A times C to get negative 24. And so we look for factors of 24 that sum to 5. So what are the factors of 24? Well, there's 1 and negative 24, negative 1 and 24, 2 and negative 12, negative 2 and 12, 3 and negative 8, negative 3 and 8, and 4 and negative 6, and negative 4 and 6. So we take those sums. Negative 24 plus 1 is negative 23. Negative 1 plus 24 is 23. 2 plus a negative 12 gives us negative 10. Negative 2 plus 12 is 10. 3 plus a negative 8 is negative 5. Negative 3 plus 8 is 5. 4 plus a negative 6 is negative 2. And negative 4 plus 6 is 2. Which pair of those factors gives us a positive 5? Well, that's negative 3 and 8. So what we do is we split this term. Got someone joining us. Just a second. Okay. We'll split that middle term into 4x squared. The middle term is plus 8x minus 3x minus 6 is equal to 0. So again, we split the middle term 5x into 8x minus 3x. And that's perfectly legal for us to do. Now you'll notice that I did choose to put the 8x before the minus 3x. And the reason I do that is because I want to group the 8x with the 4x squared and the 3x with the 6, because those will be able to get a common factor there. So out of the first two, we can factor out a 4x, and we're left with x plus 2. And then in the second one, we'll want to factor out an x plus 2. So what can we get? Have I not written something down right? Yeah, we want to factor out a negative 3, and that gives us x plus 2 equals 0. And now we have an x plus 2 in common, so we can factor that out, and we get x plus 2 times what's left, the powers in front, 4x minus 3 equals 0. But we're not finished. We need to use the zero product property to solve for x. So x plus 2 is equal to 0, or 4x minus 3 is equal to 0. So we can subtract 2 from both sides of the first one, and we get x is equal to negative 2. So that one's taken care of. And then we add 3 to both sides to get 4x is equal to 3. Divide both sides by 4, and x is equal to 3/4. So we solve that by factoring We could have solved it with the quadratic formula. We could have solved it by completing the square. But what we chose to do is factor. Okay? Any questions about that one? Okay, let's do another. Okay, we want to solve the quadratic equation using the square root property, and we want to express it in the form a plus or minus bi if needed. And so we have x plus 5 quantity squared is equal to negative 18. I'll give you a minute to copy that down, and then we'll get to work. Okay, so what do we do first? Well, I think to get rid of the square, we want to take the square root of both sides. So when we do that, take the square root of both sides, we get x plus 5 squared under the square root. And then when we do that to the right-hand side, we need to do plus or minus the square root of negative 18. Okay, so on the left-hand side, the square root cancels out the square, so we are left with x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus, and I'm going to rewrite this as the square root of 18 times I. Remember, I is the square root of negative 1, and so we can legally do that. So now we subtract 5 from both sides, and we get x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 18i. Now, can we simplify this any further? The answer is yes, we can simplify it further. The square root of 18 can be written as the square root of 2 times the square root of 9 times I. Because 9 is a perfect square, we can rewrite that as negative 5 plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2 times I. And that is your fully simplified form. Questions about this one? Okay, well, let's move on and do another. Again, we're doing very similar problems to what you'll see on your test. In this one, we want to solve the quadratic equation by completing the square. And we have x squared plus 10x is equal to 7. So what can we do here? How do we complete the square? Well, we can take this middle term, the coefficient, the 10, we can divide that by 2 and square it. So we get 10 over 2, which is 5 squared, which is 25. And we can add that to both sides. So x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 7 plus 25. And so what we get on the left-hand side, that's a perfect square, which is x plus 5 squared is equal to 7 plus 25, which is 32. And now we have almost exactly the same type of problem as we just did, where we take the square root of both sides. Well, when we take the square root of both sides, we have to introduce a plus or minus on the right-hand side. And we're left with x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 32. Now, can we simplify the square root of 32? We can. So x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. One more rewrite, x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus 4 times the square root of 2. We can then subtract 5 from both sides and get x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 2. And both of these answers, both of these solutions are real, whereas both of the solutions in the previous example were imaginary. So this is your solution, or your solutions. Okay, well, we've solved quadratics with 3 different methods. We've got one that we haven't used yet, which is using the quadratic formula. Let's do an example where we solve using the quadratic formula. So solve using the quadratic formula. And we have 3x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. And we want to solve using the quadratic formula. Well, I'm going to write out the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. I want you to take just a couple minutes and plug in those values into the formula, the a, b, and c, and see if you can get the answers. And when we come back in just a couple minutes, I will work through this and we'll see if you got the same answer that I do. So work on that now. Okay, so what is our value for b? Well, b is equal to -2. A is equal to 3, our leading coefficient, and c is equal to -3. So we plug in those values. So x is equal to the negative of -2 plus or minus the square root of -2 squared minus 4 times 3 times -3. Extend that out. All over 2 times 3. Well, that gives us 2 plus or minus the square root. -2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 3 is 12, times -3 is plus 36. Or -4 times -9, which is 36, all over 6. So we have 2 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 6. Well, I think we can simplify this a little bit to be 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 10 over 6. So now what we have is 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 10 over 6. So we can cancel out a 2. So now we have 1 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 3. And I don't think we have any more factors that are perfect squares. Oops, sorry about that. Call coming in. Go ahead and put on Do Not Disturb so that doesn't happen again. So x is equal to 1 plus or minus this, not 1 plus or minus, let's do 1 plus the square root of 10 over 3, or x is equal to 1 minus the square root of 10 over 3. And those are your two solutions. Questions about that one? Well, let's move on from quadratics and discuss simplifying a rational expression. Simplifying a rational expression. The rational expression we're given is x squared minus 16 all over x squared plus 9x plus 20. So when you're asked to simplify, what is the first thing you think of? Well, when I see an expression in the numerator and the denominator that has a quadratic, I immediately think, can I factor these quadratics? So let's try that. How does x squared minus 16 factor? Well, that's equal to x squared minus 4 squared, 4 squared is 16, all over what we have in the denominator, So we have a difference of squares in the numerator, which means that factors as x plus 4, x minus 4. What about the denominator? How do we factor that? Well, we want to look for the factors of 20 that when we add them together, we get 9. We have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, oh, no 3, 4 and 5. Well, 1 and 20 is 21, 2 and 10 is 12, and 4 and 5 is 9. So the pair we want are 4 and 5. So we can rewrite this as x plus 4 over x minus 4 all over x plus 4, x plus 5. So once we've done this, what are our restricted values? And by restricted values, I mean values of x that cause division by 0. So what values in the denominator will cause division by 0?
I would say that x minus 4.
So if x plus 4 was
4.
equal to 0, or x plus 5 was equal to 0, I agree that that would cause us a problem. So what values of x will cause that to be 0? Well, if x plus 4 is equal to 0, then x must be equal to negative 4. And if x is equal, or x plus 5 is equal to 0, x must be negative 5. So, ... our restricted values for x are negative 4 and negative 5 because both cause division by 0. Also, we can cancel out an x plus 4 in the numerator and the denominator, and our fully simplified form is x minus 4 over x plus 5. So that's the fully simplified expression, excluding x equal negative 4 and x equal negative 5. Speaking of rational expressions, let's talk about a rational equation. Switch colors here. So we have 4 over x minus 2 plus x over x minus 3 is equal to negative 4 over x squared minus 5x plus 6. So what do we need to do first? Well, just like in the other questions where we have quadratics, if you can factor it, you need to try to factor it. So let's try to factor this denominator. What are my factors of 6? Well, we want my factors of 6 to add to be negative 5. So we have 1 and negative 6. Not negative 6, positive 6. They can both be negative. So negative 1 and negative 6. In fact, I think they have to be negative. Let's see, -2 and -3. Well, it looks like we just found our pair. So we have 4 over x minus 2, and I can do those sums just so you see it. The first one doesn't matter. That gives us -7 and -5. Those were our only options. So it had to be -2 and -3 plus x over x minus 3 is equal to -4 over x minus 2, x minus 3. Now you say, well, now there's even more stuff in the denominator. I don't know how to deal with that. Well, what we need to do is look at the least common denominator, the factors that we need. So we need an x minus 2. That will clear that. We need an x minus 3. That will clear that one. And then on the right-hand side, x minus 2, x minus 3 is already there for both. So our LCD is x minus 2, x minus 3. So if we multiply both sides of the equation by that value, let's go ahead and write that out. Times 4 over x minus 2 plus x over x minus 3 is equal to, again, multiplying both sides by that LCD. And then we have times -4 over x minus 2, x minus 3. Now, luckily, this doesn't get too complicated because things will cancel out. So when we distribute these two factors to the first term, the x minus 2's cancel, and I'm left with 4 times x minus 3, plus, this time the x minus 3's cancel out, I'm left with x times x minus 2. And then on the right-hand side, the x minus 2 and the x minus 3 cancel out, so I'm left with -4. Okay, so now we need to distribute and then collect like terms. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times -3 is -12. X times x is x squared. X times -2 is minus 2x, equal to -4. Then we can combine like terms, and we'll list the greatest power terms first. X squared plus 4x minus 2x is plus 2x minus 12. Then we can add the 4 back in to both sides, and we get x squared plus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. Now, can we solve this? I think the answer is yes, because we can factor. We want to look at the factors of -8, which give us a +2. So that's 1 and 8, 1 and -8, -1 and 8, 2 and -4, -2 and 4. And I think that's all we get. So sums, -1 plus, or -8 plus 1 is -7. -1 plus 8 is 7. 2 plus a -4 is -2. And -2 plus 4 is 2. So the factors that I need are the -2 and 4. So I can factor this as x minus 2, x plus 4 equals 0. So either x minus 2 is equal to 0, or x plus 4 is equal to 0. Well, let's add 2 to both sides. X is equal to 2, or x is equal to, we'll subtract 4 from both sides, -4. Now wait, we have two solutions to this rational equation, but the only solutions that we can choose are ones that don't cause division by 0. Let's go back to our original problem. What values will cause division by 0? Well, that's the stuff in the denominators. Will any of these cause division by 0? Well, if x is 2, the x minus 2 part, 2 minus 2 is 0. So if we have x equal 2, that will cause a problem. So x equals 2 cannot be a solution. X is restricted to not be 2. So x equals -4 is our only solution, and x equals 2 is what's called extraneous. Oh, sorry. Again, got a call coming in. Sorry about that. Even on Do Not Disturb, I have a few people that can still get through. Okay, so that's the end of that problem. Do we have any questions about that one? Okay, let's do, I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more. Let's solve a simpler equation. Let's solve a linear equation. Let's solve for x, and we have 2 times 3x minus 9 plus 3x is equal to 5 times x minus 3. So how do we proceed for solving this one?
I would factor out that -5 and start with there.
I'm sorry, for some reason my computer was muted there. What do we do first? We need to distribute the 2 to the 3x and the 9, so we get 2 times 3x is 6x, 2 times -9 is -18, plus 3x is equal to, and then 5 distributes here, that's 5x, 5 times -3 is -15. And then we can combine like terms. We have 6x plus 3x, which is 9x minus 18 is equal to 5x minus 15. We can add 18 to both sides to get 9x is equal to 5x plus -15 plus 18 is 3. Now we can subtract 5x from both sides to get 9x minus 5x, which is 4x, is equal to 3. Then we can divide both sides by 4, cancel out the 4's, x is equal to 3 over 4. And it's interesting that I think we had one that was x equal to 3 over 4 earlier. Questions about that one? Okay, let's do one more question before we close out today. I think we've gone through just about everything for the test. Yeah, I think we've gone through all of those. I do want to do one last factoring, and I want to factor the expression completely. And we have 8x cubed minus 18x. So is there a greatest common factor we can factor out here? Well, I think we can factor out an x, which leaves us with x, or 8x squared minus 18. I still don't think that's fully factored. I think we can factor out more for a greatest common factor. I think we can factor out a 2, so 2x times 4x minus 9. Can that be factored any further? Anyone want to jump in on that? Take just 4. What is there something else we can factor out? Oh, we should have an x squared there. That should help you figure out what's missing. Is there something else we can factor? I was wondering, it didn't look right to me either. What you need to be able to recognize once you have that square term is that this is a difference of squares. This is 2x, or not 2x, no, that is right, 2x quantity squared minus 3 squared. So you have something being squared minus something else being squared. Well, the difference of squares formula tells us that that's 2x plus 3 times 2x minus 3. So this right here was very disguised as a difference of squares problem. So that's why it's really important to be able to see that you can factor out a greatest common factor that's not just x, but that you have to have the 2x and once you write the exponents correctly, you can recognize it as a difference of squares. So at this point, we've gone through just about everything that you'll see on your first exam, except inequalities. You'll see some of that stuff also, but we've done over the last 2 synchronous sessions problems from every section, I think. I will post this video along with some additional information about your test. Your test, I believe the syllabus says, is due October 4th. Let me verify that's what it says. Pull up my calendar just to make sure. Yes, so it's due next Wednesday. I will open up the test probably on Sunday, the 1st. That way you at least have one weekend day if you don't have any other times to do it that you can work on the test. You have to complete it in one sitting. You'll have to use honor lock, so there will be an assignment where you have to do the honor lock consent form, but I'll send that out probably tomorrow, and then your test will open on Sunday, and it will close at midnight or 11:59 p.m. on October 4th. Any questions? Well, if there are none, I appreciate you all being here today. Have a great weekend, great rest of your Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.